Welcome back to the Canadian Retirement Roadmap podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Briscoe, certified financial planner at Bayswater Wealth Management. Today, I'm truly honored to welcome Carl Richards to the show. Many of you already know Carl from our sketches that I share in our biweekly newsletters. You know, those simple drawings that somehow capture the most complicated parts of our financial lives. I've been following Carl's work since I got into the industry just over 13 years ago, and his approach has deeply influenced the way that I talk about money with my clients. Carl is a certified financial planner, best-selling author, and international speaker. You might know him from his long-running Sketch Guy column in the New York Times, or his books, The Behavior Gap and The One-Page Financial Plan. His newest book, Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches, is a collection of visual ideas and short reflections that help us explore our relationship with money, but in more human terms. In today's episode, we're going to dive into a few of my favorite sketches from the new book and talk about the stories, emotions, and meaning behind them. Whether you're planning for retirement, in retirement, or just trying to make smarter decisions with your money, I think you'll find this conversation both thoughtful and practical. And here's something not to miss. If you'd like a chance to win a copy of Carl's new book, visit bayswaterwealth.ca/podcast for details on how to enter a giveaway that we're having. Now let's jump in and start the conversation with Carl. Thank you so much, Carl, for joining us. I really appreciate it. Been a long-time follower of you since I got into the industry just over 13 years ago. Our clients are probably very familiar with your illustrations as well. We send them out pretty well on a bi-weekly basis because we really enjoy the conversations that they help generate. And I think that's kind of the whole point of it all, right? And what brings us together today is you've got a new book coming out, which we'll talk a little bit about. And we're going to go through 5 to 7 of the sketches inside of the new book and just have a conversation casually about them, what they mean to you, what I think they mean to me, what it might, what clients might think. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your background and the new book?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Just honored to have this conversation. But I mean, I've been in the financial advice industry, sort of speaking broadly, for over 25 years now. And that's ranged from running my own business, and then that led to writing a column for the New York Times that ran for every week for 10 years. And then that led to some books. But my last book was 11 years ago. I have been saying no almost every month for that whole time, between my agent or publishers or friends, or I've just said no, until a couple of years ago where I was like, look, the kind of global unease, I could even use the word anxiety, that we feel around money doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I'm pretty convinced that the way it gets better is through conversation, like making good decisions about money, good financial planning. It happens through conversation. And because I'd been drawing these little sketches for the New York Times for that whole 10-year period, these they're like explainer sketches, started to show up, and I'd see them in offices, and people kept telling me the same experience, the same story, where they would be like, yeah, clients came in, they saw it, and they wanted to talk about it. So I started thinking of them as conversation grenades, just playfully. The idea that like you sort of throw one in a room and a conversation breaks out. And so I thought, man, I'm going to put something together. I'm going to find a publisher that's willing to let me put together a book that feels more like a coffee table book that you would use, or a meditation book, or a philosophy, or a book of poetry. Like, can I do something that feels not like personal finance, but feels more like, man, I'm going to have a conversation with a wise friend through these essays. So that's why I decided to do it. It's called Your Money, Reimagining Wealth Through 101 Simple Sketches. It's out officially in October, but it's available for pre-sale now. And more than the book, I'm just thrilled with the conversations like this, that it's already starting.
Yeah, and we've gotten the same feedback from clients when I send out those emails, and sometimes they're cheeky, right? And I think that's on purpose, right? Yeah. And it meant to kind of bring out the emotion of our financial lives.
I'm okay with being provocative. Like my New York Times editor described it as confrontational without being off-putting.
Yeah, great way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway, I'm
yeah,
glad you found it that way sometimes, occasionally.
definitely. Yeah, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
should I be sending this one
Right,
out?
right,
It's gonna hit a
right,
nerve for some people, but you know what? That's
right.
probably half of the point. Uh,
Yeah.
and so we're gonna go through some today. This is kind of like a choose your own adventure because I've literally got 20 pages in front of me
Yeah.
in some order of where I'd like to go, but
Yeah.
we can kind of go where it takes us. And so you talked about this being a conversational grenade. You also say in the introduction, you won't find tips or tricks in these pages. Instead, my goal is to give you new ways of thinking about your money, new ways of talking about money. Dog ear the pages, throw it on a coffee table. Money isn't about the numbers. It's about our hopes, fears, values, and dreams. It's time we started talking about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because that's how I talk to clients. And it brings us to the first sketch. Money equals feelings. So what are your thoughts on money?
Yeah.
Money equals feelings.
And what's interesting to me about this is when you ask, like, if I draw the symbol for a local currency, like the US dollar or the British pound, if I'm in the United States and I draw the dollar symbol and I ask you what's the first thing that pops into your head, I've done this thousands of times, and it's never like exchange of value or saving. It's always things like excitement, greed, worry, anxiety, fear, apathy. That one came up the other day. Somebody told me apathy. I was like, wow, that's fat. Disdain. I had somebody say disdain. Well, those are all feelings. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's, I thought we were talking about money. Well, the moment, and your listeners can all probably relate to this, like, you've had the experience where all you did was open the American Express bill and suddenly you're in a fight. Like, how did that happen? Or you drive past a piece of property that you decided not to buy 10 years ago, and suddenly you're feeling a little bit of shame or blame because the other spouse thought it was a good idea, you thought it was a bad idea, and now it's 5 times more expensive than it was 5 years ago, or whatever. So there's all these stories, and I think the sooner, because of that, we go into conversations about money expecting it to be about math. We kind of think it's about math. Oh, this is a math conversation. Money belongs in the math department, spreadsheets, calculators. And then you find yourself feeling shame about the fact that your mom said, don't be so spoiled 40 years ago to you. Like, we've got all this inherited story. And as soon as you start talking about dreams, goals, fears, and worries, right? And so suddenly it's like having a conversation. It's like touching an electric fence that you didn't know was electric. And if we go into it instead realizing actually money equals feelings, we should expect to feel some uncertainty or some shame or some concern. If we go into it expecting that, it won't be quite as big a shock.
Yeah. And it's very funny too, because what I wrote down beside this was feelings don't show up on a statement, right? Yet that's what we're given every quarter. Here are the numbers. Here is a chart. Here's how you're doing. But it doesn't talk about how you're actually doing and the feelings associated with that money and its purpose, if it will run out, how volatile it may be, if it will fulfill your goals. And I think that ties into sketch number 5 in the book, real financial planning. And I think tying in the money and the feelings is kind of where this real financial planning lies. Can you speak a little bit to that and your thoughts on it?
There's this great book that I'm like massively grateful it was written, and I don't even know how long. I mean, I think I first read it 20 years ago, maybe more. It's a classic in the personal finance literature. It's called Your Money or Your Life. Had a huge impact on me. It's had a huge impact on millions of people. Like, this is a really important book. And I love everything about it, except the title had always bothered me. Your money or your life. It got painted as this like choice and almost like a battle between the two. right? It's either you choose your money or you choose your life. And the book, of course, is all about how you can choose your life. And it's, again, like this, I love every word in that book, except that the title always bothered me a little bit. And I'm sure the title is fine, but I think they're not separate, right? That so much of what we think about as goals and unfortunately or fortunately, like that's a different debate about, political systems or money or financial systems we have. But the one we live in means that, a lot of what we think about, like safety or security, or those are embedded in our relationship with money. And so I think real financial planning is the overlap of those two things. Like, and we often get it wrong because we think it's just about our lives, or we often get it wrong because we think it's just about money, right? We're busy watching the financial pornography network debate endlessly about whether to take a plane, a train, or an automobile on a trip. Like that's what we think it means to invest. But no one stopped and said, hey, wait, where are you going? Right. And I think like both of those circles, your money, investment decisions, budgeting apps, choice of life insurance, which mortgage you have, interest rates, all of that, that's really important. And of course, your life, your goal. But it's only when we use your life as context for those decisions do we make really good financial choices. So that's what I was trying to get at there.
Yeah, I love it. And we do a lot of stress testing and what if scenarios when we're doing financial planning to make sure that those things are looked after too, right? We want the certainty.
Yeah.
We want to plot those bucket list trips. We want to plot that wedding gift you'd like to give your child or grandchild, and ensure that the financial plan, the real financial plan, takes those life goals into account and make sure that you can achieve them. And so, yeah, I love that one. It's something we try to do here is be real financial planners, not just a financial advisor that manages investments.
Sure. Yeah. No. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Like if we can't marry your use of a financial product, which is very important, the whole point of the financial product is to help. What else would it be? Like to be entertaining, to compete with your neighbor? Like the really only point of using a financial product is to help you reach the things that are important to you. Yes. And only you, by the way, not Instagram version of you, not what your parents wanted, not like all those things could be useful informants and like valuable, not to be dismissed out of hand, but it's you. So I think that's the whole point.
There's so many directions I want to go with this.
Yeah.
At first I was thinking spend the money. So we'll come back to that one in a second because we're talking about do those things that you want to do to make your life fulfilled. But you mentioned neighbors. And so I want to jump over to that one and maybe get a little bit into the discipline of investment. We've talked a little bit about feelings and life satisfaction. Let's jump into some practical things. Number 46, 99% of your neighbors.
Yeah, again, it's supposed to be, we can sort of reference it as a Venn diagram. I don't know if you know this, Patrick, but they're a Venn diagram police. So if you're if anybody listening is part of the Venn diagram police force, don't worry. I've gotten the email. I just call it a circle sketch. It's fine. This was really a revelation to me this was in the first 5 or 6 years of the business. I was really well trained. I was working in institutional, like helping a team that managed money for institutions. So we were in big conversations with like university endowments, and like this is, like there's no room for feelings in those places, like it's brass tacks and deep analysis. And so I always thought it was about like finding the best investment. We just find the best investment. I thought that was what my job was. Actually, I remember I was always asking myself like, what's my job? Like what? And it's funny how hard it is to actually figure out in the finance industry what your job is, but it's like, what's my job? And then I finally settled on the idea, like my job was to find the best investment. And that's certainly what the financial services, like the entertainment industry around financial services has trained investors to believe, is that a real financial advisor's job is to find the best investments. Well, counterintuitively, that hunt, and we could talk for hours about why this happens, but for here, we'll just have to leave it at it's true. Don't accept it, my word for it. You can go check it out. But counterintuitively, that hunt for the best investment leads us. It's a well-intentioned behavior, but it leads us to suboptimal results. And the easy way to understand this is when we're looking for great investments, we automatically start looking for things that have recently done well. And by recent, I don't care if you mean 3 weeks, 3 days, or 3 years. It's just they've done well in the recent past. It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. You're not going to hire a football coach that's done terrible, right? You're not going to hire somebody to remodel your kitchen and go look at past projects and think these are really bad. Like, of course. It makes sense why we do it, right?
It's true. I mean, study after study has shown that the more active an investor is, the less performance they have. The average investor actually underperforms their own portfolio because of these tactical changes and shifts.
Right.
And I don't know who came up with the phrase, but I like investments are like a bar of soap. The more you touch them, the smaller they get.
Right. Like, I think the trick is shifting all your focus onto behaving well.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have some control over that.
And the result will be you will outperform 99% of people simply by having a boring average investment.
Yep.
But letting it do its thing.
Behaving well. Right. And again, like, this one's intentionally provocative. Like, I don't know if it's 99%. I don't know if it's 80%. I don't know what the number is. I just know you'll probably outperform your neighbor, and your neighbor's running around talking about the crypto trade that they just made. But that's because he's a pretend investor and he hasn't told you the full truth. So you just get to ignore your neighbor. Like, and your brother-in-law, don't listen to a word he says. Like, it's all fine.
Big hat, no cattle. Another one.
That's right.
That I really like.
That's right.
And it ties into so many, number 47, when the book comes out, everybody get it. Boring pays off, right? I mean, another one that ties into this. Boring over time becomes exciting. By trying to keep up with the Joneses, we usually end up doing the things that make us fall behind. Just so many things we could go, like you said, we could go on about it. But let's jump back for a minute to number 37, spend the money. So going back to we're saving, we're investing, we're accumulating for these years and decades. But then we have to ask ourselves, why, right? What is the purpose of our money? Why are we doing this? And number 37, called Spend the Money, hit me because I say often to my clients, you'll hate this way of thinking, but it's how I think when I'm going to buy something. If I go to buy a pair of shoes for $100, I don't view that pair of shoes as being $100 because my financial planner hat goes on and says, well, if I left that money in the investments, in 10 years, it would double to 200. And then another 10 years, that would double to 400. Oh my goodness, this pair of shoes costs $400.
Right.
Yet this summer, we just planned a trip to Portugal. And it was because of the feelings and thoughts that come along with this sketch of spend the money. Yes, this trip to Portugal will be 3 times. I'm stealing 3 times the value from my retirement to do this trip. But I have 4 young children and a lovely wife, and we want to have this experience. And so what does spend the money mean?
It's super interesting. If you want the most reliable, if the goal is happiness, if the goal is joy, if the goal is fulfillment, if the goal is a rich, like, textured, beautiful life, the best way to get there is to have experiences with the people you love. Like, there's 2 ways: experiences with the people you love and making an impact in your community. So generally some sort of charitable giving, often the closer to home where you can actually see the impact. Those have been demonstrated to generate a high return on investment in terms of happiness. Like, if that's the goal, then you spend the money, right? Like, it's settled doctrine. We don't need to argue about it anymore. And by the way, experiences with people you love don't have to cost a lot of money. They can, like a trip to Portugal. We're going to New Zealand, or we're going to Costa Rica. We just spent 4 years living in New Zealand. That cost a lot of money, like way more money than I ever planned on spending. And I would spend it every time 100 times over. If I got asked 100 times, I would say yes 100 times. Now, knowing what I know now, my kids will never forget it. We are fundamentally different people. But I'm pretty sure 20 years from now, I'll probably look back on the walk my wife and I take 4 or 5 times a week to the mailbox with the dog each evening. I'm pretty sure that will be one of the highest ROI activities of my life. So they don't have to cost a lot of money, but they can. And so that's the idea. And especially as you approach retirement, like, man, you've spent all these years being disciplined and frugal and focused and delaying gratification because that's what everybody told you should do. Like, man, go take the grandkids to Disneyland, or like whatever the thing, take the sailing lessons, like whatever the thing, put the golf shoes on, whatever the thing is, like spend the money.
Yeah. Yep. And putting that planner hat back on for 1 second, add that expense to your financial plan for me so that you know you can spend the money and still be okay in retirement, right?
Sure.
I would say
Sure.
to the listeners and clients, right?
No, I agree.
That's what it's
Assuming
for.
that we're planning and we're investing and we're spending like adults. But
Yeah.
just remember too, as an industry and as a society, we may have gone a little too far on the delayed the people listening to this are probably the type of people who already have all these wonderful traits of discipline and frugality and delayed gratification. And that group of people may need to err on the other side just a little bit occasionally, of being actually encouraged to spend a little bit on experiences.
Yeah, agreed. I say many times, those who have been able to accumulate wealth usually got there with the opposite attributes of spending money. So when it comes time to spend that money, it's a very difficult thing to do. Feelings of anxiety, don't want to run out of money. They've gotten here because of the traits and beliefs and feelings around money that are opposite to spending it. So it can sometimes be a big hurdle. Yeah. I think if we have time for 3, this one I'll try and make really quick because it's more just portfolio based, just anecdotally. Number 45, something you don't like. So interesting, because this one, when we're looking at a portfolio composition on a statement, often we'll see something that doesn't perform well, and our first instinct is to get rid of it. You've mentioned that's not a bug, it's a feature.
That's right.
What does that mean?
That's right. It's really important to realize, like, again, I'm using this phrase, like making some assumptions that you're investing like an adult, right? Like, we're broadly diversified. The portfolio was designed intentionally, not just this smorgasbord of things we've heard about in the news. You've got a well-designed portfolio based on your values and goals. What you're going to end up having, you've got a diversified portfolio. What will happen by definition in a diversified portfolio will be there will always be things that are doing really, really well. There will be things that are doing okay, and there will be things that are doing poorly. And the temptation is to see the things that are doing poorly and sell them. Like, you're like, get rid of that dog, like that kind of language. Like, I've had enough of that. And I mean, I've done it. I could tell you hundreds, if not thousands of stories, some of them very painful, to be honest. So instead, what we realize, the problem, of course, is the things that are doing really well and you're really excited about will switch places with the things that are doing poorly over time. And you don't know when, and you don't know why, and it's a fool's errand to try. And so instead, what we want to train ourselves to do is think, oh, that thing's doing poorly. This might be the time to intelligently rebalance, even, right? Like, I might actually, instead of getting rid of it,
oh my goodness,
I might be buying a little bit more of it. And if you start to realize what you're doing, though, like, another way to stay this is like, buy things when they're low relative to everything else. Maybe sell a little bit of something when it's high relative to other things. And we're not talking about wholesale changes. We're talking about changes around the edges. But that starts to make you feel smart, right? Like, oh, I sell a little when things are high, and I buy a little when things are low. And I do that in a disciplined way. Why are you doing that on the 15th of January? Well, because we always do it on the 15th of the first month of the quarter, right? Like, it's not because you're smart. It's because you're disciplined. Actually, you're incredibly smart because you're disciplined. So that's what it's about. If you do diversification right, there will always be something worth complaining about.
Great. I love it. I love it. And you're doing what makes so much sense, but what statistically speaking, people do the opposite of, right?
Right.
We look at the flows in and out of specific investments, and consistently the flows are opposite to what they should be. People are selling while they're down and buying while they're going up, resulting in the opposite of such a basic financial principle.
Sure.
Okay. This one I thought might speak to you because it's the Alpine style life. And many of our listeners may not know, but you really love the Alpine and the mountains and skiing. What does there's a bit of a story behind this, and what does it mean to you
Yeah.
and into finance? That's 76.
So this is a bar graph, and it's just graphing quality of the experience on one axis, the vertical axis, and amount of stuff and it's a downward sloping line, meaning you could make the argument that the quality of the experience actually goes down the more stuff you have. And the reason this was called Alpine style was there's this form of climbing. Most of us, when we think about like something like climbing Everest, what we think about is this sort of big sort of what's called siege mentality. Like you go there for weeks, you take hundreds, if not, tens, if not hundreds of people. You set up fixed ropes. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks. That's one way. But back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was sort of this renaissance of this idea of like, what if I did that all in one push, right? Like, what if I put everything I needed in my pack and then I emptied stuff out, everything I absolutely needed in my pack, and then I took stuff out till it was light enough. So, man, it really strips the experience down. I've got a friend I believe is featured in the book that runs his painting company from his iPad. Right? He doesn't have any more stuff. It's just like super simple. And so I love the idea of, the perfection's not achieved when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away.
A good book called Subtract. It talks about that concept. Really good. Look it up, listeners. Subtract. Really good book.
No, super good. So it's sort of like, do I really need more running shoes? Do I really need another car? Do I really need, like, what, and I think that a way to answer those questions is largely around like, what is the value I'm trying to get from the experience? And what can I take away? And so I love playing that thing, like intentional constraints. So that's Alpine style life to me is really, and it's, by the way, it's always attention. Because, I just bought something again and I was really proud of myself. We just went on a trip. We went into the Patagonia store. There was a jacket. I wore it around in the shop and I was going to buy it. And then I was like, I bet if I get home, I'll look in my closet and think I already have something like this. And guess what? I can always buy it after I go home. So I'm not normally that good at it, but that's a version of the Alpine style life is, do I really need this thing?
I love it. And we'll have actually an upcoming podcast on the 72-hour test that kind of talks a little bit about that
great.
too.
Yeah.
So this kind of leads into the last one that I'd like to ask you about. And it's one that I often leave. We have your volume 2 book that we've shared with some clients as well, number 90. And I often leave this open in our reception area, hoping that that's the page people will take a look at. And it's things change. And I love the illustration or sketch on this. And I love it because it's so simple, yet it says so much. I want to get your take on it.
It's just such an interesting paradox that we desperately want certainty. And I have like deep empathy for the generation just above me, like the people that just sort of early into or headed into retirement. Because 40 years of their lives were a pretty predictable path, right? Like it used to be, you got the GI Bill, you went to university, you got a good job. And over the last 10 years, so much of that has changed. A move like globally away from collective systems to individual systems. And again, I'm not arguing whether those are good or bad. I'm just saying that the rate of change, at the very least, the perception of the rate of change, I would argue the actual rate of change, but it doesn't really matter. It's just the perception of the rate of change, really leaves us feeling a little unmoored. But what I'm trying to get at here is change is reality. Uncertainty is reality. And when you start to think about, right, like there will, just about the time you get comfortable with something, things change a little bit. And I don't know why that's so hard to kind of ingrain myself or most of the people I've spoken to about it. It's sort of like, my daughter actually once said to me, I was saying like, man, this is really hard. I think we were out on an adventure in the backcountry somewhere. And I was like, this is really hard. And no, it was a business I had started. It was a project I was doing in a business. And I was complaining a bit that it was really hard. It's like things keep changing and keep moving. And she said, she was in her 20s and super witty. She's like, I find it so funny that you had some expectation that you were going to go on an adventure and it was going to be easy and certain. Right? The best
Carl
parts,
Richards, the guy who draws pictures about uncertainty.
right. The best parts of every adventure, the best parts of every trip, the best parts of just something as simple as going to the art museum. You can plan out every minute of your experience in the art museum, right? And I guarantee you it will not go according to the plan. And probably the thing you will talk about for the rest of your life will be the thing that wasn't in the plan. It was the surprise. It was the uncertainty. It was the unexpected thing that you ran across and felt a thing you weren't prepared to feel. Well, that's all I'm trying to get at. It's like, maybe we can just start accepting the idea that that's okay, right? And take appropriate naps and when you feel a little overwhelmed by it, but that's okay. That's what I was trying to get at there.
I love it. And you say, that's the rhythm of life, because that's life. Things change, right?
Yeah.
And financial planning is the same. We can make the best laid plans. Something will happen to derail it. But as long as we're taking all of these concepts into account, doing the best job we can, I think we're going to end up in a good place. And I think things change is such a great way to end off our conversation. I would like to thank you tremendously for taking the time to chat about your work of art. And I'd like to remind people that this comes out in October, and we'll be getting our hands on some as well. Really appreciate the time, Carl. Thank you so much. And if there's any final thoughts to leave our listeners with, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thanks, Patrick. The last thing I would say is probably what we started with. Like, just like the people who have been successful in retirement and are trying to figure out how to spend. Well, the best way to solve that problem is to practice. Just small little things like practice. Same with talking about money, right? Like, I'm hoping, I don't really care so much about the book. I care what the book can provide, is some conversation starters. And so maybe just use this, whether you get the book or not, use this conversation. Is there something you could take away to talk about? Is there some conversation you could have, some easy, small, little conversation about money that you haven't had before? Like, for instance, what was money like growing up in your home? Like, I asked my wife that. We've been married 30 years. I asked her last year, right? The story she shared surprised me. I didn't know. I bet a lot of you listening, there might be people listening in their 50s, 60s, 70s who might not be able to answer that question about their spouse. Well, what if we just had a conversation, right? What if we just had a conversation? Easy. Don't get stressed about it. Just tiptoe into it. So that's it, Patrick. Thanks so much for being so thoughtful about the questions. It's obvious you put a lot of time into this. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Carl. Let's throw those conversation grenades. I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, cheers.
I hope this episode encouraged you to pause and reflect, not just on your money, but about what that money means in your life. You can find a link to Carl's new book, Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches, in the show notes, along with links to his website and social media pages if you'd like to follow his work or reach out directly. And don't forget, if you'd like to enter the draw to win a copy of Carl's book, just head over to bayswaterwealth.ca/podcast for details. As always, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your trust.
Trademarks owned by Investment Planning Counsel Incorporated and licensed to its subsidiary corporations. Investment Planning Counsel is a fully integrated wealth management company. Mutual funds available through IPC Investment Corporation and IPC Securities Corporation. Securities available through IPC Securities Corporation, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Insurance products available through Patrick Briscoe. Independent of his role with IPCIC, Patrick Briscoe is also a co-author in the forthcoming books, entitled Financial Success for Pre-Retirees and Financial Success for Retirees, due out in early 2025.